Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, most gracious, ever merciful, to our esteemed members of Congress, representatives of the U.S. State Department, and all of you honored guests this morning. Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace on all of you. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA, welcome to our special event here on Capitol Hill this morning, True Islam, a campaign against extremism. My name is Amjad Mahmood Khan, and I'll be moderating this morning's brief program. We all witnessed one of the worst terrorist attacks committed on U.S. soil in San Bernardino, when two violent and disturbed individuals massacred many innocent civilians and injured many more. Speaking personally, the events on that day shook me to my core. I was born and raised in Southern California and went to public schools and college not very far from where the attacks took place in San Bernardino. On that day, I was preparing a lecture for my class that I teach at UCLA Law School. And as I was preparing for that evening's lecture, I was following on the online stream Channel 7 Eyewitness News and the chaotic events that were unfolding rapidly that day. Like all of us in the room, my thoughts and prayers immediately turned to the victims of this heinous crime against humanity. But perhaps unlike many in this room, I also carried a different emotional burden as well. As an American Muslim of Pakistani origin, I watched in horror when the authorities revealed that the perpetrators behind the attack were young American Muslims of Pakistani origin. My thoughts immediately turned to the mosque where I frequent and where I grew up, which is San Bernardino County's largest mosque, Bait al-Hamid Mosque in Chino, home to over 1,000 congregants belonging to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And for over 25 years, our mosque has stood as a beacon of peace in this diverse and vibrant county. But within 24 hours after this attack, it now served an additional purpose. It became a site to hold an interfaith prayer vigil to remember the victims and pray for their families. It was at this precise moment of intense grief and heightened emotions that our community felt obligated to shoulder a greater burden of explaining our faith, Islam, and decrying loudly and plainly the attacks of violent extremists who commit nefarious acts in Islam's name. Yes, we understand that there is a growing Islamophobia in this country that has resulted in the unfair targeting and scapegoating of innocent American Muslims who have absolutely nothing to do with the perpetrators. And we have stood out against anti-Muslim scapegoating and stereotyping that are antithetical to what we stand for as a nation. But at the same time, we also understand that as American Muslims, we have a special responsibility to use the attacks of San Bernardino as an opportunity to offer a precise counter-narrative to groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda that have stolen and dehumanized our beautiful faith. For this reason, in December, we initiated a new campaign called True Islam, an effort to precisely, loudly, and unambiguously define the core principles of Islam that stand in perfect harmony with American values. It is a campaign to discredit and marginalize ISIS, to demonstrate that the ideology of Islam is inconsistent and opposed to ISIS. ISIS, in perverting Islam, inflicts the greatest damage on Muslims more than any other group. It is a campaign that distills Islam's inner beauties to their essential core, to quote the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad in a manner that fully exposes the depravity of violent extremists. Make no mistake about it, over 3 million American Muslims in this country have uniformly condemned ISIS. But while condemnation is important, our community believes much more can be done to marginalize the root ideology and message of extremists. The perpetrators of the San Bernardino massacre were young Muslim millennials who through their disaffection and online recruitment grew depraved and criminal. Why does this happen, and what can we do to address it? Our community believes the problem lies in the narrative and the message. There's a struggle for the soul of Islam in this world. And the existential struggle stems from a perverse understanding of some fundamental tenets of Islam. So we commissioned an independent YouGov survey of American Muslims to determine what the American Muslim community thinks about some core concepts within Islam. And some of the data that we gleaned frankly concerned us. For example, only 1/3 of American Muslims believed in a separation of mosque and state. Only 1/2 believed Muslims should be loyal to the country that they reside in. And less than 1/2 believed it was wrong to kill individuals who blaspheme or insult Islam. So against this backdrop, our community formulated 11 principles we feel all Muslims should affirm and advocate. True Islam rejects terrorism, rejects violent jihad, advocates for the equality, education, and empowerment of women, advocates for freedom of religion, conscience, and speech, advocates for a separation of mosque and state, advocates for loyalty to one's country of residence, advocates for universal human rights, stresses the truth and veracity of all the verses of the Quran, not just some, rejects the notion that any one religion can monopolize the truth or one salvation, advocates for unified and just leadership, and rejects the notion that a Messiah will violently purge non-Muslims in the future. These are principles that define the true message of Islam versus the militant and distorted message of Islam peddled by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We have taken this simple message of true Islam to show how diametrically opposite it is from the message of violent extremists. And since late December, when we formally launched the campaign in San Bernardino County, we have received over 3,000 individual endorsements. We are especially honored that one of the first responders to the massacre, San Bernardino Police Chief Jared Bergwan, stood by us to announce this campaign and has expressed his support for the message that we are promoting. We view him as a hero against the scourge of extremism. We have invited over 2,200 American Muslim leaders to join our campaign at trueislam.com, and we are heartened that several have accepted our invitation. Our supporters have included lawmakers, police chiefs, and faith communities all across America. So today, with this event, we take our message to congressional offices for our 6th annual Day on the Hill. Our volunteer force has traveled from across 30 states, from over 70 chapters all across America last night, and are here in this room to begin the task of educating our leaders of the value of offering a countervailing message to ISIS. Later today, we plan to brief several hundred offices about our efforts. We are deeply appreciative to all of you who have gathered here to hear what we have to say, and we hope you will support our efforts to fight extremism at its root. Now I'll invite for a short welcome our National Vice President, Falauddin Shams, to share a few words, and then we'll turn to several representatives for some comments, and then we'll adjourn. So I invite Falauddin Shams to please take the stage.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. I start in the name of God, the most benevolent, ever merciful. To all of our esteemed members of Congress and honored guests, Assalamu alaikum, the greetings of peace. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, USA, I extend heartfelt greetings to every one of you. Our President, Dr. Ahsanullah Zafar, could not be here, but he sends his deepest appreciation to all guests of our community who are present this morning, especially the co-chairs of the Ahmadiyya Caucus. In my role as a representative of Ahmadiyya community in Marshall Islands and Micronesia, I have received wonderful cooperation and assistance from our caucus, as well as the U.S. embassies in both countries. Ambassador Armbruster and Ambassador Rosen have been very kind in working with us, and based on their professionalism and statesmanship, I can truly say that 7,000 miles away, it feels proud to be an American. Our community is spread across over 200 countries with membership exceeding tens of millions of Ahmadi Muslims. Ahmadis herald from all ethnicities, be they Arabs, Pakistanis, Indonesians, or Africans. They herald from diverse walks of life, be they Nobel laureates, statesmen, or scholars. Yet, regardless of the immense diversity within our community, we are drawn to a single leader who unites and binds us spiritually, and that is His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad. We call him the Khalifa of Islam, a leader of the faithful who resides these days in the United Kingdom. His Holiness is a global ambassador of peace who categorically and consistently denounces extreme and perverse interpretation of Islam that bring Islam into disrepute. In 2012, in this very room, as a guest of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, His Holiness spoke to a bipartisan audience of 30 members of Congress about the challenges of extremism and the vital importance of forging just relations between nations. His Holiness carries the original message of the founder of our community that the only true jihad is one that is internal and spiritual, one that is based on ideas, not bullets or bombs. Islam's inner beauties must be revived in the world, and our community's aim and purpose is to carry that revival in a manner that drowns out the voice of extremism, hatred, and bigotry. I would also like to mention that Ahmadiyya Muslim community's founder claimed to have received divine guidance in all matters, so our efforts and our ideology are rooted in the divine message of everlasting peace. So, today's launch of the True Islam campaign from Capitol Hill is an extension of the work our community has been doing for 125 years. And despite bitter persecution in some parts of the Muslim world, we will not be deterred in continuing the message of opposing extremism wherever and whenever it inflames the world, because we are united by one leader. So our core message this morning is quite simple. As Muslims who stand for 11 principles that define true Islam, we refuse to allow ISIS or any other militant group to define our beautiful faith. We will actively oppose a narrative of hate and carnage through a counter-narrative of love and service to humanity. Thank you again for joining us here today, and God bless everyone. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmadiyya. Thank you very much for the honor of addressing all of you. And I think it's very important that the Ahmadiyya community, Muslims, take up this campaign and initiate this campaign of True Islam. I've heard many comments out in the community that said, well, why doesn't the Muslim tell people who they really are? President Obama had called us to challenge ourselves to create a campaign such as this to challenge the perverted extremists that are perverting the true Islamic teachings. And I think you're doing it. I heard the 11 precepts. They didn't sound too much different from what I've learned of the history of Islam when you had many leaders in the past centuries who said the very same thing. So I think it's a revisit of the precepts that had been truly taught in the past. So people today cannot say that Islam or Muslims do not know what universal human rights is. They cannot say that Muslims do not understand the rights of women. They cannot say that Muslims don't understand the separation of religion and state. Everything you have set out is, in terms of your precepts, really reflect the principles of the Constitution of the United States.
Ted Poe and I are truly privileged to share the co-chairmanship of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Caucus in Congress. And I am personally truly grateful to each and every one of you for being here today, for taking the message of true Islam to all the members of Congress, for sharing your values with each and every one of us. America today has an enemy of great savageness, an enemy that engages in fear-mongering and hate and murder, an enemy that sows mistrust among loyal Americans, an enemy that misinterprets a religion practiced by 1 billion people around the world and 3 million people right here in the United States. Your campaign of True Islam is truly a gift to all of us, because we need to rid this country of the ignorance that is being sown by ISIS and so many other groups, and frankly, even some politicians. And your speaking up today and every day is going to make a huge difference in educating Americans and educating the world. You are devout Muslims, and you are devout Americans, and for that we are very grateful.
I am Ted Poe from the state of Texas. It's quite the honor to be here today, and it is quite an honor to be the co-chair of this caucus, along with my friend from California, Jackie. As an observer of the Ahmadiyya community, it seems to me it's a perfect example for what Muslims can do to counter the violent propaganda advocated by groups such as ISIS. And as my friend Jackie has said, you have courage to do that. That is a good thing, to have courage. That is a unique trait of the Ahmadiyya community. Not only courage to speak out against ISIS, but also to stand for your beliefs. Because you face kind of a multifaceted conflict. Not only the fight against ISIS and the fight to describe true Islam, but you have the fight for your own existence and the persecution that occurs to the Ahmadiyya community throughout the world. I think far too many people in the world, a lot of Americans too, do not realize that there is persecution among Muslim communities by other Muslims. And that does exist. And we need to speak out against that persecution as we would any other type of persecution that takes place in the world. I think, what a contrast. Here you have ISIS that thrives on two words: hate and violence. And you have the Ahmadiyya community that thrives on peace and tolerance.
The principles you've been putting forward through the True Islam community are about love and tolerance, and it's a great message. It's a message America needs to hear. It's a message the world needs to hear. I commend you on what you're doing. I can tell you, I know your community has suffered for your beliefs. A constituent of mine, Dr. Kumar, was murdered in cold blood in Pakistan as he tried to give back and provide cardiac surgery to indigent folks who needed it in Pakistan. So I know your community is suffering for your beliefs. I appreciate your steadfastness, your conviction, and the way you are embracing love and hope and tolerance and helping combat the extremist vision out there of hate that the terrorists are pushing and that ISIS is pushing. Thank you for what you do. We stand with you and are here to support you. And thank you so much for letting me be a small part of this program.
I want to thank the other members for being here, and Judge Poe and Congresswoman Spear for their advocacy with your group and organization. And I want to fully subscribe to what you are here to do. The True Islam campaign, pushing back against hateful rhetoric, I think is clearly important in this day and in this time. But my brief comments, I wanted to just say thank you. As Amjad mentioned, I represent San Bernardino. I grew up in San Bernardino, just down the street from where the attacks occurred. And to see our communities come together as one after the tragedy was something that made me feel so proud of the region in which I come from. I want to thank you not only for the blood drive that you continue to do each and every year that I participated in this year, but for opening up your mosque and to engage in the conversation about what true Islam is at a local level, to be honest and open, to open up your doors to people of all religions, to talk with them, to reassure them. It meant so much to me, and it meant so much to the community in San Bernardino.
It is great to see Ahmadiyya Muslims here on Capitol Hill. Your voice is so important and couldn't be coming here at a more critical time period. Last Saturday, I was invited to speak at the Day of Remembrance hosted by the Japanese American community. And you know what they wanted me to speak on? On Islamophobia. It was because 74 years ago, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. With the stroke of a pen, 120,000 Japanese Americans lost everything that they had, despite the fact that 3/4 were U.S. citizens. I'm honored to be here for the launch of this series. Education and communication through forums like this are key to the effort to fight these kinds of misguided attempts. We must stand up to hate and make sure that our voices are there against xenophobia and racism. They have no place in our country.
Assalamu alaikum. I stand here today, and I came here today, because I stand in solidarity with the Muslim community. When people do these things, these dastardly deeds in the name of a religion, they are only evil people doing evil things. It is not religion, and it's time for us to call them what they are, evil.
Our next speaker is Brian Bachman. He's the director of the Office of International Religious Freedom at the U.S. State Department. He's a dear friend of our community. He spoke at our annual convention last year, and he works on issues affecting our community and beyond. We're really delighted that he took time out from his schedule today to be here. We invite Brian to share his remarks.
Thank you, Amjad. First, I'd like to bring the greetings of Ambassador Saperstein, who wishes he could be here with you today, but he wishes to assure you that he keeps the struggles of your community against persecution throughout the world close to his heart. And he engages throughout the world with the Ahmadi community and with governments where the Ahmadis live to bring that persecution to an end. This campaign, True Islam, is vitally important. It's important to us because it is not something as the U.S. government that we can do. Certainly is not something that we can do well. It is not for the U.S. government to say what is true Islam and what is not, what makes a good Muslim and what is not. But we definitely want that debate to be happening within the Muslim community. We don't have the credibility to state that. You do. And we rely upon you to make that case, to make the case that, for why you can be a Muslim and be for peace, why you can be a Muslim and be for justice, why you can be a Muslim and be an American. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Well, that concludes the formal portion of this program. We're very honored to have so many of you who've come this morning from so many different faith communities, NGOs, think tanks, many people in the religious freedom space, congressional staffers from so many offices, people who have been real friends of our community. We're really delighted to have the greetings of the chairman of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, Representative McGovern, whose staff is here, and who's spoken very passionately for the rights of our community and indeed all persecuted communities. We invite you to stay and engage with our volunteers who've come from all over the state. We hope you will support our campaign and support our efforts. Thank you very much for coming.